We got a highlight clip here of game 284, Baltimore and Houston. Baltimore up to 7-point favorites in this one. Total coming down a little bit, interestingly enough, 51 and a half. Baltimore looks great against the Browns. The Browns are never prepared for week one, and Baltimore was very prepared for week one. Lamar Jackson found every open receiver, and he had plenty of them because the Browns' major injury concerns in the back seven. Houston, they probably played okay, I would say, against the Chiefs. But again, the Chiefs team that is probably number 2 in everybody's AFC power ratings, just below the Baltimore Ravens. Pretty brutal start to the season for Houston, having to play, the Chiefs and the Ravens back to back. What do you think about them getting 7 at home here?
So typically, I think in a normal NFL season, I'd probably be all over the Texans here. They were beat by double digits on national TV, got an extra couple days to prepare, taking on a Ravens team that had one of the dominant, if not the most dominant performance from week one. To me, it'd be a typical auto play on the Texans. Some of it, though, I think some of the college game is creeping in the NFL where teams, we talk about parity in the NFL where the power rankings difference between 1 through 16, 1 through 32 is just not that disparate. Any little half-point edge you can get is worth betting as far as I'm concerned. But I just think maybe the Chiefs and the Ravens are just that much better than everybody else. We certainly saw it when the Ravens played the Texans last year. They absolutely dismantled them, 41-7. Box score agreed with it. It was an absolute ass kicking for the Ravens. And Ravens, to me, have the best roster. To me, I still have the Chiefs number 1 in my power rating because the head coach, well, Harbaugh's a pretty good head coach too, but Reed and Mahomes put them over the top. But the Ravens are real close there. And I don't trust Bill O'Brien. And I like Deshaun Watson. But that offensive line looked better at times last week, but still in the end, I just don't know if they got enough to compete here with the Ravens. Lean Baltimore for me, but typically it would have probably made my card last 5 years Texans plus the full touchdown at home.
Well, and that's why I wanted to talk about this game specifically. And I know it's a highlight video. I know people want picks, but I'm more about the process. I'm more about the philosophy of handicapping as opposed to just sitting here handing out picks left and right. And that's just it. Traditionally speaking, this is a play on the Texans. For you, for me, it's a contrarian handicap. A lot of people on Baltimore this week. We see that with the line going up. And you got the Bill O'Brien factor. And that's the hard part here, is that he is at such a dramatic disadvantage against a head coach like John Harbaugh. We talked earlier in the show about how to handicap and how to quantify college coaches and all of that, and how there are some very big gaps with college football. For the most part in the NFL, the gaps aren't that large, and then you get a Bill O'Brien, and you get a Bill O'Brien against a John Harbaugh. That's problematic to me. I do think it was easy for Baltimore to look really good against Cleveland because they know the personnel, they know the weaknesses, they knew they could attack that secondary, and they attacked it very, very effectively and very efficiently. This week against Houston, does Houston's secondary play a little bit better? Probably can't play worse than the Browns secondary did last week. But is Houston able to do anything offensively to keep pace if they need to? And I don't know the answer to that question. Last week, Will Fuller was very, very busy, but we saw that Houston has had to change their offense without DeAndre Hopkins. And, you sort of wonder here in week 2, like we just talked about with the week 1 to week 2 overreaction, thoughts and theories here. How much changes for Houston from week 1 to week 2? Nothing needs to change for Baltimore. Nothing really ever needs to change for Baltimore. Does Houston adjust and doesn't allow them to stick around in this game? I don't know if I can trust Bill O'Brien to do that. I don't know if I can trust the Texans offensive line to give Watson time to develop a rapport with somebody other than Will Fuller.
Exactly. I way too much uncertainty on the Houston side. What I do have certainty is, at least to start off a season, Harbaugh is money, whether it's preseason games, season openers, his trends are really good. That guy, we got a sample size now of decade plus. His teams are ready to go at the start of the season. We even saw it last year, how dominant they were to start it off. Again, I'm not typically, I would want to take the home dog getting a full touchdown here, a playoff type of caliber team with a decent quarterback in Deshaun Watson. No. And to me, the edge isn't there enough. Way too much uncertainty with Bill O'Brien.
So here's a question, and this is something that we'll talk about more as we go throughout the season here. We mentioned this a little bit in passing last week. For most NFL seasons, it's Las Vegas and it's the offshore market. But for this NFL season, we've got a lot of states on board now, to the point where I would assume that we have, a much more public sentiment out there to bet on teams like the Ravens. And so far, we have seen that here. Do you think that maybe this is a game that gets to 7.5? Maybe a rogue hook pops up here somewhere. And at that point, would you take the Texans?
And lean Texans. Again, NFL, every half point matters. That's what I'll preach. And I'll preach for most cases, even this year. But when it comes to the Ravens and the Chiefs specifically, because two teams that have quarterbacks, unique quarterbacks. Mahomes might be the most gifted arm talent we've ever seen in the history of the NFL. Lamar Jackson, we've never seen anything like him. I'm not sure the point spreads can necessarily account for some of these guys. I mean, outside of Baltimore's horrible performance in the playoffs, I mean, this team is just crushing teams. We thought they had a historically great team last year until the playoffs. Well, I'll tell you, the Chiefs are on a historic run, 10 straight wins, 10 straight covers. I mean, typically the market accounts for this. I'm not sure that it does. So, yeah, I would normally run the window and say, give me Texans plus 7.5. I'm telling the edge here, and it's more of an in-game live wagering opportunity for me. Either it's going to be a very competitive game right down to the fourth quarter, or it's going to be evident early that, hey, the Texans don't have an answer for this Lamar Jackson-led Baltimore offense, and we're going to see what we saw last year, Baltimore crushing the Texans. So in-game live would be the way I'm going to go, even if it moves a half point.
Yeah, that Kansas City line just going north here as well this week, up from 6.5, 7 to 8.5. And you bring up a good point about live betting. I think when we circle back next week on Thursday, we'll do a highlight video here for our ATS YouTube page on live betting, some of the things that you want to look for, both in college football and in the NFL. But